Before we continue with part 2, here's what happened in part 1. Adana was married to Tobena for 9 years. 9 years of trying to have a baby. 9 years of being called barren by his family. 9 years of drinking herbs that his mother, Mama Tobena, gave her every single morning. But Adana wasn't barren. She was being poisoned. When Adana finally escaped the marriage, she discovered the truth. Those herbs were actually abortifacients, chemicals designed to prevent pregnancy and cause miscarriages. She found Mama Tobena's notebook documenting 12 women, 12 wives Tobena had married and poisoned over 15 years. Adana was victim number 12. But here's where it gets darker. Mama Tobena had already chosen replacement wife. Number 13, a young woman named Celine, who was living in their house, already drinking the same poison. 3 weeks after stopping the herbs, Adana discovered she was pregnant. Not just pregnant, pregnant with twins. Then the doctor found something even more shocking. It wasn't twins, it was triplets. The woman they called Barren for 10 years was carrying 3 babies. And Tobena, he was about to marry Celine, the woman Mama Tobena had been grooming to replace Adana. Adana received a wedding invitation. Tobena and Celine's wedding. He wanted to show off his new wife and prove he'd moved on. But what Tobena didn't know was that Adana had been hiding for 7 months, growing 3 babies, gathering evidence, planning revenge. And when she showed up at his wedding, well, that's where part 2 begins. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, the link is in the description. But if you're ready to see what happened when the barren wife returned with triplets, let's continue. He's perfect, Dr. Adaobi announced, holding up a tiny, furious human covered in vernix and attitude. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. Healthy lungs, clearly. They placed him on Adana's chest for 30 seconds warm, squirming, impossibly real, before whisking him away because Baby B was already making his appearance known. At 3:52 p.m., her second son arrived quieter, more contemplative, looking around the delivery room with eyes that seemed to be cataloguing everything for future reference. 7 pounds, 11 ounces, the nurse called out. Identical twin number 2. And at 4:01 p.m., when Adana thought she had nothing left to give, her third son made his entrance breach, feet first, like he'd decided to do things his own way from the very start. 7 pounds 9 ounces. Dr. Adaobi laughed. He's dramatic. I like him already. 3 sons. 3 perfect, healthy, impossible sons. Adana lay back against the pillows, her body exhausted, her heart so full it felt like it might crack her ribcage open. Tears running sideways into her hair, while the nurses moved around her like a choreographed dance, weighing babies, checking vital signs, wrapping 3 tiny humans in identical blue blankets. "Do you have names picked out?" a nurse asked, bringing the first baby back to her. Adana looked down at the face that looked so much like hers. It was startling her nose, her mouth, her determined chin. None of Tobena in him at all, like her body had decided to erase that man from the genetic record entirely. "Chimamanda," she whispered, then caught herself. "No, that's a girl's name. I meant Chima. It means God knows. Because God knew I wasn't barren even when everyone else believed the lie." "And the others?" the nurse asked, settling the second and third babies in her arms, so she held all 3 at once. This impossible weight of proof that she'd never been the problem. "Kamsi, God is with me, and Munachi, God's will." Adana looked at her 3 sons, her 3 miracles, her 3 pieces of evidence that would blow Mama Tobena's world apart. "They're my testimony," Ukachi sobbed louder. "Those names are perfect. Everything is perfect. Adana, you did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Adana corrected, looking at the woman who'd hidden her, fed her, protected her for 8 months without asking for anything in return. "I couldn't have survived without you. The first week with triplets was a blur of feeding schedules, diaper changes, and learning to function on 17-minute increments of sleep. They'd converted Ukachi's living room into a nursery 3 cribs arranged in a row. 3 tiny humans who ate on rotation like they'd coordinated shifts to ensure their mother never rested. Chima, the eldest by 5 minutes, was the loudest. Kamsi, the middle child, was the hungriest. Munachi, the youngest, was the most alert, his eyes following movement across the room like he was trying to figure out how everything worked. "They're beautiful," Ukachi said one night at 2 a.m., holding Kamsi while Adana fed the other 2 simultaneously, a skill she'd developed out of pure necessity. "But how are you going to manage 3 babies alone?" "I'll figure it out," Adana said, but honestly, she had no idea. The answer came 2 weeks later, in the form of Dr. Adaobi, who showed up at the flat with a woman named Patience, a trained nanny in her early 50s who'd raised 6 children of her own and had references that read like love letters. "You can't do this alone," Dr. Adaobi said firmly. "I'm hiring her for you. Consider it my investment in making sure you survive long enough to destroy that evil woman." Patience took one look at the 3 babies and rolled up her sleeves. "These boys are blessed," she announced. "I can see it in their eyes. And their mother is a warrior. I will help you fight." With Patience handling nights and Ukachi managing days, while Adana recovered, life became almost manageable. Almost. Weeks turned into months. The babies grew. Chima started smiling first, great big grins that showed his gums and made strangers stop on the street to cool. Kamsi was the first to roll over, determined and focused. Munachi was the observer, watching everything, storing information behind eyes that seemed too wise for a 3-month-old. Adana's body healed. The swelling went down. Her stomach shrank, though it would never be completely flat again. 3 babies had rearranged her geography permanently, and she wore the stretch marks like war paint. By the time the boys were 4 months old, Adana looked at herself in the mirror and saw someone she didn't recognize. Stronger, fiercer, a woman who'd survived poison and betrayal and had come out the other side carrying 3 pieces of proof that she'd never been the problem. She pulled out Tobena's wedding invitation from where she tucked it into her Bible. The wedding was in 3 weeks. "It's time," she told Ukachi. Time for what? Time to show him what he threw away. The first thing Adana did was buy a phone, a new one, a number nobody had, a device clean of history. The second thing she did was call a lawyer. His name was Barrister Okonkwo Chukwudi, and he came highly recommended by Dr. Adaobi as someone who doesn't lose cases and doesn't tolerate evil people. They met in his office on a Wednesday afternoon. Adana brought the photos of Mama Tobena's notebook, her medical records showing the pregnancy that happened within weeks of stopping the herbs, and Dr. Adaobi's official documentation of the abortifacient poisoning. Barrister Chukwudi was a tall man in his late 40s, with silver streaks in his hair and eyes that had seen enough courtroom battles to be unshockable. He reviewed everything in silence for 20 minutes, his expression growing darker with each page. Finally, he looked up. "This is one of the most diabolical things I've seen in 30 years of practice," he said quietly, "and I've seen a lot." "Can we prosecute?" Adana asked. "We can do better than prosecute. We can destroy her." He leaned forward. "Attempted murder, poisoning with intent to cause permanent harm, conspiracy to commit fraud. Because I guarantee, if we dig into those previous marriages, we'll find financial motives." This woman systematically destroyed 12 women's lives and documented it like a science experiment. "What do you need from me?" "Time. Let me build an airtight case. I'll need to track down some of those other women. If they are still alive, their testimonies will be crucial. I'll need to get the herbs tested in a lab, which means obtaining them somehow. And I'll need you to be willing to testify in court about everything." "I'll do whatever it takes." Barrister Chukwudi smiled grimly. "Good, because when I'm done with Obiajeli Okafor, she'll wish she'd never learnt what herbs were." The third thing Adana did was buy 3 outfits. She took a bus into the city, her first time out in public in 8 months, and walked into an expensive boutique in the kind of neighborhood where women like Mama Tobena shopped. "I need something that says I survived your poison and thrived," she told the sales assistant, a young woman with dramatic eyelashes who looked confused but intrigued. They settled on an emerald green fitted dress that hugged curves Adana's body had earned through carrying 3 humans. Not flashy, not cheap looking, just undeniably elegant. The kind of dress that made people look twice. For the boys, she found matching white outfits with tiny bow ties. "For what occasion?" the sales assistant asked while wrapping everything. "A wedding," Adana replied, smiling. "My ex-husband's wedding." The sales assistant's eyes went wide. "Are you serious?" "Very serious. Girl, I don't know your story, but whatever you're planning, I'm here for it." The fourth and final thing Adana did was hire a car. Not just any car. A Rolls-Royce Phantom in midnight black with cream leather interior, the kind of vehicle that costs more to rent for a day than most people make in a month. "You're insane," Ukachi said when she saw it parked outside. "That's too much." "No," Adana replied calmly, strapping Chima into one of 3 car seats they'd installed in the back. "Too much would be arriving in a helicopter. This is just enough." The wedding was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Saturday at Street Michael's Cathedral, the biggest church in Onitsha, the kind of place where society weddings happened and photographers crowded outside to catch glimpses of the wealthy and powerful. Adana planned to arrive at 2:45 p.m., late enough that the ceremony would be in full swing, early enough that she wouldn't miss the important parts. "Are you sure about this?" Ukachi asked for the 100th time as they got dressed that Saturday morning, Patience helping to wrangle 3 babies into their tiny outfits while Adana applied lipstick with hands that only shook a little. "I've never been more sure of anything," Adana replied. She looked at herself in the mirror. The emerald dress fit perfectly. Her hair was styled in neat cornrows that emphasized her face, a face that had lost the haunted look it carried for 9 years, that now carried something else: power, purpose, proof. "Mama is about to end some people's careers," she told her reflection. At 2:30 p.m., they left. The Rolls-Royce glided through Onitsha streets like a shark through water, sleek, silent, dangerous. People stopped to stare. Children pointed. Keke drivers honked their horns in appreciation. In the back seat, 3 4-month-old boys slept peacefully, unaware they were about to become the most dramatic wedding guests in recent history. St. Michael's Cathedral was even more elaborate than Adana remembered. White ribbons everywhere, rose petals scattered on the stairs, a red carpet leading from the parking lot to the massive wooden doors, ushers in matching gold vests directing guests to their seats. Through the open doors, Adana could hear the choir singing something classical and expensive sounding. "The ceremony started 30 minutes ago," Ukachi said, checking her phone. "They're probably at the vows by now." "Perfect timing," Adana replied. She stepped out of the Rolls-Royce. The ushers turned to look, then stared, then practically scrambled over each other, trying to figure out what to do with the vision of elegance that had just emerged from a vehicle worth more than their yearly salary. Patience handed her Kamsi. Ukachi took Munachi. Adana held Chima against her hip, his tiny bow tie slightly crooked, his eyes wide and curious. "Ready?" Ukachi whispered. "Born ready," Adana replied. They walked up the red carpet. Whispers started immediately. "Who is that? Look at those babies. Are they triplets? Wait, isn't that... No, it can't be. It is. That's Adana, Tobena's ex-wife." The whispers followed them up the stairs, through the massive doorway, into the cathedral, where approximately 500 guests sat in pews watching Tobena and Celine stand at the altar. Celine looked beautiful in a white dress with enough lace to upholster furniture, her face glowing with the satisfaction of a woman who thought she'd won. Tobena looked handsome in a charcoal grey suit, his smile wide as he held Celine's hands. And Mama Tobena sat in the front row wearing purple lace and a matching jelly, her face radiating triumph. None of them had noticed the new arrivals yet. The priest was speaking. If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever. Hold your peace. It was like the universe had scripted this moment. Adana stepped forward into the center aisle, her heels clicking on the marble floor, 3 babies visible in the arms of 3 women, and said in a voice that carried to every corner of the cathedral, "I have a reason." 500 heads turned. The choir stopped singing. The priest's mouth fell open, and Tobena's face went completely white. Adana smiled. "Hello, husband," she said. "I thought you might want to meet your sons." The cathedral had gone so silent you could hear Chima's tiny gurgle echo off the vaulted ceiling. Tobena stood frozen at the altar, his hand still holding Celine's, his face cycling through emotions faster than his brain could process them. Shock, confusion, denial, and something that might have been recognition starting to dawn. "Adana!" His voice cracked on her name like he wasn't sure she was real, like maybe she was a ghost that had materialized to haunt his second wedding. "In the flesh," she replied, walking slowly down the center aisle with Chima on her hip. Behind her, Ukachi and Patience followed with the other 2 babies, creating a procession that 500 guests couldn't look away from, even if they'd wanted to. "Surprised to see me?" Celine's head whipped between Adana and Tobena. "Who is this?" "Tobena, who is this woman?" "His first wife." Adana answered before he could. "The barren one. Remember me, Celine? You were living in my house, sleeping with my husband, waiting for me to be thrown out so you could take my place." Celine's face went red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Room 712 of Makari Hotel?" Adana raised an eyebrow. "No, wait. Wrong script. That was someone else's cheating husband. You and Tobena didn't bother with hotels. You did it right in my house, didn't you? While I was drinking poison every morning thinking I was the problem." Gasps rippled through the cathedral. Mama Tobena stood up from the front pew, her face like thunder. "How dare you interrupt this sacred ceremony with your lies?" "Lies?" Adana turned to face her, and something in her expression made Mama Tobena actually take a step back. "Tell me, Mama, are these lies?" She pulled out her phone with her free hand and held it up. On the screen was a photo of Mama Tobena's notebook, zoomed in on one particular page. Adana. Started treatment month 1 of marriage. Dosage 15 milliliters daily. Result miscarriage month 6. Conception prevented since. Currently month 117. Plan. Introduce selling month 115. Prepared dissolution month 120. Murmurs exploded through the crowd. "What is that?" someone shouted from the back. "That," Adana said, her voice carrying across the stunned cathedral, "is a record of how your beloved Mama Tobena systematically poisoned me for 9 years. Every morning, she gave me herbs that she claimed would help me conceive. But they weren't fertility herbs. They were abortifacients. Chemicals designed to prevent pregnancy and cause miscarriages." "That's a lie." Mama Tobena's voice was shrill now, panicked. "She's lying. She's bitter. She's trying to ruin this wedding because she's jealous." "Am I?" Adana shifted Chima to her other hip, and as if on cue, he grabbed a handful of her hair and smiled at the crowd. "Do I look jealous, Mama? Do I look bitter? Or do I look like a woman who finally figured out the truth?" She began walking toward the altar, toward the family that had destroyed her and then discarded her like trash. "For 9 years, I drank your poison every single morning," Adana continued, her voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "For 9 years, I believed I was broken. I believed my body was cursed. I cried myself to sleep, begging God to fix whatever was wrong with me. I let your son treat me like I was worthless because I couldn't give him children. I let you call me barren in front of guests. I let this entire family humiliate me. She stopped at the front of the church, just feet away from Tobena, who still hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, just stood there like a man watching his entire life unravel in real time. And then, Adana said softly, I stopped drinking your poison. And guess what happened? She gestured to Chima in her arms, then to Kamsi and Munachi being held by Ukachi and Patience. 3 months later, I was pregnant. Not just pregnant with triplets. 3 healthy, perfect boys. Because there was never anything wrong with me, Mama Tobena. The only thing wrong was you. Mama Tobena's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Those babies aren't even Tobena's. You probably got pregnant by some other man. You're trying to trap my son. DNA test, Adana interrupted calmly. I'm happy to do a DNA test right now in front of everyone. Are you? Silence. Tobena finally found his voice. Adana, I don't understand. You're saying my mother poisoned you. Not just me. Adana pulled up another photo on her phone. Ifeoma, Chiamaka, Ngozi, Amara, Chidinma, 11 other women before me, all married to you at different times. All given the same herbs, all ending in failed marriages and dissolved unions. Your mother has been doing this for over 15 years, Tobena. You've had 12 wives. 12! And you never once questioned why none of them could give you children? The crowd erupted. 12 wives. This man has been married 12 times? Jesus Christ! What kind of family is this? A woman stood up in the middle of the church, her hand shaking as she pointed at Mama Tobena. Ifeoma is my daughter, she said, her voice breaking. She married this man 14 years ago. She left after 2 years with no children, and she never recovered. She tried to tell us his mother was giving her something that made her sick, but we didn't believe her. We thought she was making excuses. She died 3 years ago. Suicide. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Another woman stood. Chiamaka is my sister. She was marriage number 8, I think. She also said something was wrong with the herbs, but the family said she was being disrespectful to her elders. She can't have children anymore. The doctors said her reproductive system was damaged by prolonged exposure to toxins. More people were standing now. More voices. I know Ngozi. Amara is my cousin. Chidima told me. The cathedral was descending into chaos. The priest looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. The choir members were whispering frantically to each other. The photographer had stopped taking pictures and was just staring, his camera hanging, forgotten in his hands. Tobena turned to his mother, his face white. Mama, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this. Mama Tobena's face had gone from shocked to calculating. These women are lying. They are all lying. They are jealous, bitter women who couldn't fulfill their duties as wives, and now they are trying to blame me for their failures. I have evidence, Adana said quietly. Medical records showing I was being poisoned, lab tests on the herbs identifying the compounds. Photos of your notebook documenting every woman, every dose, every outcome. And I have a lawyer who's already building a case for attempted murder, conspiracy and fraud. The police will be receiving all of this evidence on Monday morning. Mama Tobena's eyes flashed with something dark and dangerous. You have no right. I have every right. Adana's voice rose for the first time, and Chima startled in her arms, letting out a small cry that she immediately soothed. You tried to destroy my life. You tried to make sure I never had children. You poisoned me. You manipulated your son. You systematically erased 12 women from existence like we were nothing. And you did it all with a smile. Calling yourself a mother, calling yourself a Christian, sitting in the front row of the church like you had any right to be there. She turned to Tobena, who was now sitting on the altar steps, his head in his hands. And you, Adana said, her voice softer but no less cutting, you let her. 12 wives, Tobena. 12 women who loved you, who tried to build a life with you, who believed in you, and you let your mother destroy every single one of us. You never questioned her. You never defended us. You just sat back and let it happen because it was easier than standing up to her. I didn't know, Tobena whispered. You didn't want to know, Adana corrected. There's a difference because somewhere deep down, you knew something was wrong. You just chose to ignore it because acknowledging it would mean taking responsibility. She looked at Celine, who had been standing frozen this entire time, her white dress now feeling like a costume for a play that had been cancelled mid-performance. Celine, Adana said, not unkindly. Run as fast as you can. Because if you marry this man, if you let Mama Tobena into your life, you're next. You think you're special? You think you're different? You're just wife number 13, and in 2 years, maybe 3 if you're lucky, you'll be replaced by wife number 14. Unless you figure out what's in those herbs before they destroy you completely. Celine's eyes were wide, filling with tears. She looked at Tobena, then at Mama Tobena, then back at Adana. The herbs, she whispered. She's been giving me herbs too, since I moved in. She said they would prepare my body for children. The cathedral went silent again. How long have you been drinking them? Adana asked. 8 months. Have you gotten pregnant? Celine shook her head, tears now streaming down her face. We've been trying. I didn't understand why it wasn't working. The doctor said there was nothing wrong with me, but I just kept not getting pregnant. And Mama said it was because I wasn't taking the herbs consistently enough. She stopped, her hand flying to her mouth as the realization hit. Oh my God, she breathed. Oh my God, she's been poisoning me too. Mama Tobena lunged forward, grabbing Celine's arm. Don't listen to her. She's filling your head with lies. The herbs are fine. They're traditional medicine that has been used for generations. Then drink them, Adana said coldly. Right here, right now. If they're so safe, if they're so traditional, drink a cupful in front of all these witnesses. Mama Tobena's hand dropped from Celine's arm. I'm too old, she said quickly. My body can't process. Drink them, Adana repeated, or admit what you've been doing. The standoff lasted 10 seconds that felt like 10 years. Then Mama Tobena's face crumpled, and something ugly emerged from underneath. Rage, hatred, desperation. You were supposed to disappear, she screamed, her composure finally shattering. You were supposed to leave quietly like all the others. You weren't supposed to come back. You weren't supposed to have children. You were barren. I made sure of it. The confession hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had finally been exposed. Tobena's head jerked up. Mama, what did you just say? I made sure of it, Mama Tobena repeated, her voice high and frantic now. All of them, all 12, they weren't good enough for my son. They weren't from the right families. They didn't understand how to be proper Oka for wives. So yes, I gave them herbs. I made sure they couldn't get pregnant. I made sure they would fail. Because my son deserves better. My son deserves a woman who can give him strong sons from a bloodline I approve of. They were my wives, Tobena shouted, standing up now. They were my wives, and you destroyed them. I was protecting you. From what? From happiness? From love? From having a family? His voice broke. Mama, what have you done? What have you turned me into? He looked around at the cathedral full of witnesses, at the women standing with their hands over their mouths, at Adana holding a baby, his baby, one of 3 babies he didn't even know existed, and something in him seemed to crack completely. I'm a monster, he whispered. I let you turn me into a monster. You're not a monster, Mama Tobena insisted, reaching for him. You're my son. Everything I did was for you. Get away from me. Tobena backed away from her. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. He turned to Adana, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Genuine remorse. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. You tried to tell me. You tried to make me see, and I didn't listen. I chose her over you. I called you Barren. I let them throw you out. He looked at the 3 babies, his sons, children he should have been raising, children he'd never met. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve anything, but I'm sorry. Adana studied him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to list every cruelty, every dismissive comment, every night she'd cried herself to sleep while he was in the next room pretending she didn't exist. Part of her wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt her. But holding Chima, looking at Kamsi and Munachi, she realized she didn't have space for that kind of anger anymore. She was too full of love, too full of life, too busy being a mother to waste energy on hating a man who was already drowning in his own mistakes. I don't forgive you, she said quietly. Not today, maybe not ever. But I don't hate you either. I just don't have room for you in my life anymore. These boys, she gestured to her sons, they're mine. I carried them. I birthed them. I'm raising them. You can have DNA rights if you pay child support. You can have supervised visits if you prove you're a different man than the one who threw me out. But you don't get to be their father just because you contributed DNA. You have to earn that. Tobena nodded, tears running down his face. I understand. Adana turned to leave, her heels clicking on the marble floor as she walked back down the aisle toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Celine say in a shaky voice, I'm not marrying you. I'm not doing this. I'm not becoming wife number 13. Behind that, she heard Mama Tobena wailing, You can't leave. The guests are here. The food is paid for. You're embarrassing the family. Behind that, she heard the priest say weakly, I think this wedding is cancelled. And behind all of that, as Adana stepped out into the sunlight with her 3 sons and her best friend and her nanny, she heard the sound of 500 people starting to talk at once, spreading the story that would be told in Onitsha for years to come. The story of the woman they called Barren, who came back with triplets. The story of the mother-in-law who poisoned 12 wives. The story of the man who married 13 times and never once questioned why. The Rolls Royce was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, gleaming black and cream in the afternoon sun. Adana settled Chima into his car seat, helped Ukachi and Patience with the other 2, and then slid into the back seat herself. Where to? The driver asked. Adana looked at her 3 sons, all sleeping peacefully now after their dramatic church debut. Home, she said. Take us home. And as the car pulled away from St. Michael's Cathedral, leaving behind the ruins of a wedding and a family that had tried to destroy her, Adana allowed herself to smile. Not a bitter smile, not a triumphant smile, just the quiet, satisfied smile of a woman who had survived hell and come out the other side carrying 3 pieces of heaven. The video went viral before they even made it back to Ukachi's flat. Someone, probably one of the 500 guests, possibly several of them, had recorded the entire confrontation on their phones. By the time Adana was feeding Kamsi his bottle and trying to calm Munachi's fussing, her face was all over Nigerian, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even TikTok. Number Barren wife returns with triplets was trending. Number poisoned brides was number 2. Number Mama Tobena must fall was climbing fast. You're famous, Ukachi said, scrolling through her phone with wide eyes. Adana, you're famous. People are calling you a hero. They're calling Mama Tobena a monster. Someone started a GoFundMe to help track down the other 11 wives. I don't want to be famous, Adana replied, adjusting Kamsi's position so he could burp. I just wanted the truth to be known. But the truth, once released, had taken on a life of its own. By Sunday morning, 3 of the previous wives had been located and interviewed by bloggers. Their stories were horrifyingly similar. Herbs that made them sick, pregnancies that ended in mysterious miscarriages, husbands who eventually turned cold, families that blamed them for being barren, and marriages that dissolved after 2 to 3 years. One woman, Chioma, wife number 7, gave a video interview that made Adana cry. "I thought I was the only one," Chioma said, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow. "I thought I was cursed. I tried to end my life 3 times because I couldn't understand why God hated me so much. And now I find out it wasn't God, it wasn't a curse. It was just an evil woman with a bottle of poison and a smile." By Monday morning, the story had hit mainstream news. CNN picked it up, BBC Africa ran a segment, local Nigerian stations were camping outside the Okafor mansion where Mama Tobena had barricaded herself inside and refused to comment. The police opened an investigation. Barrister Chukwudi called Adana at 9:47 a.m. "The prosecutor's office wants to meet with you. They are fast-tracking this because of public pressure. Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 9 years," Adana replied. Tuesday afternoon, Adana sat in a police station giving her official statement while patients watched the triplets in the waiting area. She told them everything: the herbs, the morning rituals, the cramping, the miscarriage, the 9 years of believing she was broken. She handed over the photos of the notebook, her medical records, Dr. Adaobi's toxicology reports on the herbal compounds. The investigating officer, a no-nonsense woman named Inspector Chamaka, listened to everything with a face like granite. "This is one of the worst cases I've seen in 20 years of police work," she said when Adana finished. "Systematic poisoning, conspiracy, fraud, possibly even manslaughter. If we can prove that some of the previous wives' deaths were connected to the long-term effects of these herbs." "Can you prosecute?" Adana asked. "Oh, we're going to do more than prosecute. We're going to make an example out of Obiajele Okafor. Women like her think they can destroy other women with impunity because it's traditional or family business. Not anymore, not on my watch." By Wednesday evening, Mama Tobena was arrested. The footage of her being led out of the mansion in handcuffs, her expensive lace wrapper trailing behind her, her face twisted in rage and disbelief, was played on every news station. "This is a conspiracy," she screamed at the cameras. "That girl is lying. She's a witch. She's trying to destroy my family." But the evidence was overwhelming. The herbs had been seized from the mansion and tested. They contained pennyroyal extract, cotton root bark, and several other compounds known to prevent pregnancy and cause miscarriages. The notebook was authenticated as being in Mama Tobena's handwriting. 3 of the previous wives came forward to give statements. Dr. Adaobi testified as an expert witness. The case was airtight. Tobena showed up at Ukachi's flat on Thursday morning. Adana almost didn't let him in, but curiosity, or maybe something that used to be love and was now just a faded scar, made her open the door. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, clothes rumpled like he'd been sleeping in them. "Can I see them?" he asked quietly. "My sons. Can I just see them?" Adana hesitated, then stepped aside. Chima, Kamsi, and Munachi were in their bouncy seats in the living room, all 3 watching the ceiling fan with the intense focus that babies bring to mundane objects. Tobena stood in the doorway, staring at them like he couldn't quite believe they were real. "They look like you," he whispered. "Yes," Adana agreed. "They do. Can I?" He took a tentative step forward. "Can I hold one?" Adana picked up Chima, the most easygoing of the 3, and carefully transferred him to Tobena's arms. She watched as Tobena cradled his son awkwardly, like he'd never held a baby before, which he probably hadn't. Chima looked up at his father with curious eyes, then reached up and grabbed Tobena's nose. Tobena laughed, and it sounded like breaking. "He's perfect. They are all perfect. And I missed everything. I missed your pregnancy. I missed their birth. I missed 4 months of their lives because I was a coward who let my mother control everything." "Yes," Adana said simply, "you did. I've filed for divorce from Celine. The wedding was obviously cancelled, but we were still technically anyway. It's over. I've also cut off all contact with my mother. I won't be attending her trial. I won't be visiting her in prison. I'm done. Good. And I want to be in their lives, Tobena continued, his voice urgent now. Not as the man who threw you out. Not as the husband who failed you. But as a father who knows he doesn't deserve this chance but is begging for it anyway. I'll pay child support. I'll pay for everything, their education, their health care, anything you need. I'll go to therapy. I'll become the kind of man they can be proud of. I just want to know my sons. Adana studied him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to say no, to tell him he'd lost that right when he chose his mother over his wife. But looking at Chima in his father's arms, looking at the way Tobena's eyes had filled with tears, she realized that punishing him meant punishing her sons, and they deserved better than that. Supervised visits, she said finally. Once a week, for 2 hours, with me present. You prove you're consistent, you prove you're reliable, you prove you've changed, and we'll talk about expanding it. But the first time you miss a visit, the first time you choose something else over them, we're done. Understand? I understand. And Tobena, Adana's voice turned cold. These boys will know the truth. When they are old enough, I'm going to tell them everything. About the poison, about the lies, about the 12 wives. They'll know what kind of family they come from, and they'll decide for themselves what kind of relationship they want with you. I won't lie to protect your feelings. Do you understand that? Tobena nodded, tears streaming down his face. I understand, and I'll tell them myself. They deserve to know the truth. He handed Chima back to Adana, his hands lingering for just a moment. Thank you, he whispered, for surviving, for being stronger than all of us, for being the kind of mother they deserve. After he left, Ukachi came out of the bedroom where she'd been giving them privacy. Are you okay? She asked. I don't know, Adana replied honestly, settling Chima back in his seat. I think I'm still processing everything. 6 months ago, I was sleeping on your couch thinking my life was over. Now, I have 3 children, a criminal case against my ex-mother-in-law, and a story that's trending on 3 continents. It's a lot. You're handling it like a queen. I'm handling it like someone who doesn't have a choice, Adana corrected. These 3 boys need me to be strong, so I'm strong. When they're grown and don't need me anymore, then I'll collapse and process everything. But not today. The trial of Obiajeli Okafor began 6 weeks later. Adana testified on the 3rd day, wearing a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her face clean of makeup. She told the court everything: the herbs, the miscarriage, the 9 years of psychological torture, the notebook, the moment she discovered the truth. Mama Tobena's lawyers tried to paint her as a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge, but the evidence was too strong. The other wives testified. Dr. Adaobi presented her medical findings. The toxicology reports were entered as evidence. Even Celine testified about how she'd been given the same herbs and had started experiencing the same symptoms. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, assault with intent to cause bodily harm. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison. You systematically destroyed 13 women's lives, the judge said, his voice cold. You poisoned them, manipulated them, gaslit them into believing they were defective, and then discarded them when your poison did exactly what it was designed to do. You showed no remorse. You showed no humanity. You deserve none in return. When the verdict was read, Mama Tobena screamed and had to be physically restrained by bailiffs. Adana sat in the gallery holding Chima, feeling nothing, no triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of completion. Justice had been served. The poison had been exposed. The truth had won. 2 years later, Adana stood in the kitchen of her own apartment, a 3-bedroom flat in a quiet part of Enugu that she'd bought with the settlement money from the lawsuit against the Okafor family, watching 3 2-year-olds destroy. her living room, with the focused chaos that only toddlers can achieve. Chima was trying to build a tower with blocks that kept falling over, his face set in determination that reminded her so much of herself it was startling. Kamsi was in the corner, reading a picture book upside down, making up his own story that involved dinosaurs and a character named Captain Noodles. Munachi was watching his brothers with that contemplative expression he always wore, like he was studying them for a future exam. "Boys," Patience called from the living room, "come and eat your lunch before it gets cold." 3 pairs of feet stampeded toward the dining table, and Adana smiled at the sound of life. Loud and messy and perfect. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ukachi. "News just broke. Mama Tobena appealed and lost. She's serving the full 25 years. Justice remains served." Adana replied with a thumbs up and put her phone away. She didn't think about Mama Tobena much anymore. The woman had taken 9 years of her life, but Adana refused to give her any more. She'd gotten her justice. Now she was focused on building something new. The food business had grown. What started as a small stall had become a proper restaurant called Chima's Kitchen, named after her firstborn son. She employed 12 staff members, all women, many of whom had their own stories of being told they were worthless, being thrown away, being poisoned by families who were supposed to protect them. "We're the comeback crew," one of her cooks liked to say. "We don't just survive, we thrive." Barrister Chukudi had helped her establish a foundation, the Adana Initiative, which provided legal support, medical care, and financial assistance to women escaping toxic marriages or abusive in-laws. They'd already helped 47 women leave dangerous situations and rebuild their lives. Dr. Adaobi served on the board. Ukachi managed the day-to-day operations. And every month, on the last Saturday, they held a support group where survivors shared their stories, their strength, their strategies for moving forward. Tobena came every Sunday at 3 p.m. for his visit with the boys. He'd kept his promise consistent, reliable, changed. He'd been in therapy for 2 years. He'd sold the Okafor mansion and donated half the proceeds to the foundation. He ran a small electronics shop now. Nothing flashy, just honest work that let him sleep at night. The boys called him Uncle Toby, a name that made Adana sad sometimes, but she'd let them decide what to call him when they were old enough to understand the full story. "Mama?" Chima called from the dining table. "Kamsi took my chicken." "I didn't," Kamsi protested. "It fell off his plate." "Boys," Adana said, walking into the dining room with the voice she'd perfected over 2 years of motherhood, firm but warm. "There's plenty of chicken. Nobody is stealing. Everybody is eating. Understood?" "Yes, Mama," they chorused. She sat down to eat with them. These 3 miracles who proved every day that she'd never been the problem, that her body had never been broken, that the only thing poisonous in her life had been the people who claimed to love her while destroying her from the inside. After lunch, while Patience cleaned the kitchen, Adana took the boys to the small park 2 blocks away. They played on the swings, chased birds, collected leaves like they were treasure. Munachi, always the observant one, suddenly looked up at her and asked, "Mama, why you sometimes look sad?" Adana knelt down to his level, cupping his small face in her hands. "Sometimes, baby, Mama remembers hard things from before you were born. But then I look at you and your brothers, and I remember that all the hard things brought me to you. So the sadness becomes something else, something like gratitude." Gratitude? Munachi struggled with the word. "It means being thankful, even for the hard things." "Oh," he thought about this seriously. "I'm gratitude for you, Mama." And just like that, Adana's eyes filled with tears, the good kind, the kind that came from being so full of love it had to overflow somewhere. "I'm grateful for you too, my love. All 3 of you. You saved my life in ways you won't understand until you're much older." That night, after the boys were asleep in their shared bedroom, 3 small beds in a row, 3 nightlights casting soft glows, 3 sets of peaceful breathing, Adana sat on her balcony with a cup of tea and thought about how far she'd come. From that morning 9 years ago when she first drank poison thinking it was medicine, to the night she walked out of the Okafor mansion with one bag and a broken heart, to the clinic where she learned she was carrying not one but 3 miracles, to the cathedral where she exposed the truth in front of 500 witnesses, to this moment sitting on her own balcony in her own apartment listening to her own children breathe. The journey had been brutal, but she'd survived it. More than survived, she'd transformed it. She'd taken 9 years of poison and turned it into 3 years of purpose. She'd taken a story that was supposed to end with her disappearing like the 11 women before her, and instead she'd written an ending where she became the voice for all 12. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a woman named Adaeze. I saw your interview last month. My mother-in-law has been giving me herbs for 3 years. I never got pregnant. I stopped drinking them 2 weeks ago. I just took a test. It's positive. Thank you for speaking up. You saved my life. Adana smiled, typed back. Congratulations. Now protect that baby and yourself. If you need help leaving, contact the foundation. We've got you. The messages came weekly, now, sometimes daily, from women all over Nigeria, all over Africa, even from other countries. Women who'd been told they were barren, who'd been drinking traditional herbs, who'd suddenly gotten pregnant the moment they stopped. The poisoning of women by their in-laws wasn't rare, it turned out. It was epidemic. It was just finally being talked about. And Adana had become, without meaning to, the face of that conversation. The woman who'd survived and come back stronger. The barren wife who'd returned with triplets. The proof that sometimes the problem isn't you, it's the people trying to convince you that you're the problem. She finished her tea, checked on the boys one more time. Chima had kicked off his blanket. Kamsi was sleeping with his favorite book. Munachi was curled up like a tiny philosopher even in sleep and then went to bed. Tomorrow she had a restaurant to run, a foundation meeting to attend, and 3 2-year-olds to chase around. But tonight, she was just a woman who'd survived hell and learned to build heaven from the ashes. A woman who'd drunk poison for 9 years and still managed to create life. A woman who'd been called barren and gave birth to an abundance that couldn't be measured in just children, but in justice, in truth, in transformation. As she drifted off to sleep, her last thought was simple. I am not what they tried to make me. I am what I became despite them. And I am enough. I have always been enough. 5 years after the cathedral confrontation, Adana received an invitation in the mail. Her heart stopped when she saw the return address. Okafor family. She opened it with shaking hands, expecting. And she didn't know what. Another wedding? A lawsuit? A threat? Instead, it was a letter in Tobena's handwriting. Dear Adana, I'm not getting married. I wanted you to know because I know how these invitations triggered you before. I'm writing to tell you that I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. I don't deserve another chance at love. I had it with you, and I destroyed it. But I wanted to thank you for letting me be part of our sons' lives. Chima, Kamsi, and Munachi are the best thing I never deserved. Watching them grow has been the only good thing I've done in the last 5 years. I also wanted you to know that 11 of the 12 women my mother poisoned have been located. 3 have gotten married and had children. 5 are rebuilding their lives. 2 passed away, but their families finally have answers and closure. One Ifeoma's sister spoke at the appeal hearing, said your courage gave her family peace. You didn't just save yourself, you saved all of us. I hope you're happy. I hope your restaurant is thriving. I hope you found someone who loves you the way I should have but didn't know how. Thank you for being the kind of woman who turns poison into medicine, pain into purpose, and endings into beginnings. Tobena. Adana read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with other things from her past that she kept but didn't need to look at every day. Then she went into the living room where her 7-year-old sons were doing homework at the dining table, their heads bent over math problems, their voices arguing about whether 7 plus 8 was 15 or 16. "Boys," she called, "when you're done with homework, let's go get ice cream." "Yes!" Chima pumped his fist. "Can we get the big size?" Kamsi asked hopefully. "If you finish your work," Adana replied. Munachi looked up at her with those wise eyes. "Mama, are you happy?" It was a question he asked sometimes, like he could sense when memories were pressing on her chest. "Yes, baby," Adana said, and meant it completely. "I'm very happy." "Good," Munachi said seriously. "You deserve to be happy." Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds, Adana thought, came wisdom that adults spent lifetimes trying to learn. She walked over and kissed the top of his head, then Kamsi's, then Chima's. "You three," she said, "are the best thing that ever came from the worst thing that ever happened to me. Never forget that." "We won't forget, Mama," Chima said, not really understanding but knowing it was important. That evening, after ice cream and bedtime stories and tucking in 3 boys who were getting too big for tucking in but still let her anyway, Adana stood in front of her bedroom mirror. She looked different than she had 10 years ago. Older, yes, but also stronger. Her eyes carried stories now, not all of them happy, but all of them hers. Her body carried marks from pregnancy, from survival, from transformation. Her hands, which once trembled while drinking poison, now steadied 3 children, ran a business, signed legal documents that helped other women escape. She was 38 years old. She was a mother of triplets. She was a restaurant owner. She was a foundation director. She was a survivor who'd become a warrior, who'd become a voice. And she was single, which some people saw as sad, but which Adana saw as choice. She'd had offers good men, kind men, men who wanted to love her and her ready-made family. But she wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. And that was okay. Because this life, this loud, chaotic, beautiful life she'd built from the ruins of poisoned years was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Adana's story reminds us that sometimes the people who try to destroy you are actually preparing you for your greatest victory. She was poisoned for 9 years, thrown out like trash, called barren by everyone. But she didn't just survive. She came back with 3 sons, a thriving business, and a foundation that has now helped over 200 women escape toxic marriages. Mama Tobena is serving 25 years in prison. Tobena sees his sons every Sunday and is rebuilding his life. And Adana, she's finally free. What would you have done in Adana's situation? A forgive and move on quietly. Expose them publicly. What she did. Take legal action. Only. Something else? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one.